Limitless Wrestling fans. Jon Alba, and then the czar of Limitless Wrestling, Randy Carver. We are here. The Limitless Wrestling Podcast is back. After an absence last week, we are here to recap Pretenders Beware and talk about a whole lot more that just rattled Limitless Wrestling these past couple of weeks. We're looking at an entirely new landscape here in Limitless, and man, oh man, did some big things happen. Randy, first off, how are you feeling?
I'm a bit under the weather today, but I'm feeling very good. Like I always have like a Limitless show hangover, it feels like, and this time running on no sleep actually caught up to me a little bit, but I'm doing good, man. I really enjoyed the show. I think this is I think with any anniversary show, we kind of close a chapter and open a new chapter in Limitless Wrestling, and
it's your WrestleMania.
We did that this time. What's that?
It's your WrestleMania.
Yeah, I would say so. Without having an annual event called like a Mania or something like that. Yeah, I mean that's our biggest show of the year, September to September. That's when we debuted in 2015, and we always try to go all out for the anniversary shows.
No doubt about it. Now that 3 years is officially in the books, what are you thinking?
I don't know, just how fun it is. It's sometimes I get lost with that, with everything to do with the actual business portion of Limitless Wrestling. It's easy to kind of lose yourself in that, but I had a lot of fun on Friday at Pretenders Beware. I think everybody really had a lot of fun, and that's what makes it worth it. We had about 450 people in that building that are all there for the love of professional wrestling and Limitless Wrestling, and that's the coolest thing ever. So I don't know, I'm happy all around.
As you should be, from all accounts. Obviously I wasn't there, but from all accounts it seems like it was a great show, and there was some major stuff happening. But before we get into any of that stuff, we got to talk about what's coming up immediately. In with the Out Crowd, Friday, October 12th in Orono, Maine. It is the return, of course, of Let's Wrestle. The Mainstay Posse taking on Calvin Strange, Rob Marsh, and Todd Harris. Anthony Green versus Davey Ann for the first time ever. Troy Nelson making his debut. Brandino Davis, CPA, and Zane Lee Rude. Bear Country coming up. This is right around the corner, this event. What do people have to know?
Yeah, it's only a couple weeks away, which is crazy. Obviously, Orono, Maine is a lot of people who may have traveled to Orono for early Limitless shows at the same venue, if you don't know, the American Legion Post 84. And just super stoked for this one as well. There's a lot of new faces on these Let's Wrestle cards, and it's really a collaboration of myself and the Mainstay Posse, and we kind of go back and forth on guys who we want to give new opportunities to, and we want to create new matches and see, what situations these guys can, really excel in. There's obviously going to be some Limitless mainstays at these shows, as you heard. Anthony Green will be there, the Mainstay Posse, Davey Ann, but it's that mix of the new talent, or the talent that you don't see very much on Limitless shows, like a Bear Country or in Zane Lee Rude, Eric Johnson. The list goes on. Like it's just such a cool mesh of talent at different stages in their careers, and we're just throwing them new situations and seeing how they do. And I definitely think it's a cool show to check out.
I would agree with that. It's a lot of fun. And if you want a recap of the last show, head over to our friends at the Main Event Podcast. They did a nice job running through that. And I had a good time doing some commentary with them, too. We got to get those matches out. People got to see those. People got to hear those.
Oh, yeah. They're in editing right now. So they will be definitely check youtube.com/Limitless Wrestling. I want to say at least within a month or so, we should have some content thrown up there from the Let's Wrestle shows. Okay,
now, normally we go match by match, running through the shows and everything, but that's not happening here, man. It's not happening here because everyone's talking about it, and how could you not be? You fooled me. MJF. He's back. MJF with a hostile takeover of Limitless Wrestling. I don't know what happened here. You guys had legitimate heat. And all of a sudden, this guy ends this show, drives in, that back garage gate rolls up, a masked man rolls in, it's MJF, and JT Dunn turns his back on Ace Romero after Ace Romero defeated him in the main event of this show. What the heck happened here?
I mean, it's got to be the craziest ending to a Limitless show there's ever been. I stayed by the door as I usually do when the shows are about to end, and I didn't want to tell people not to leave yet, but it was probably about 20 people who went out the door, and unfortunately for them, they missed it. But a lot of people know now to stick around. There's almost always something, it seems like, at the end of the show, and it's not over till it's over. But yeah, door opens, a blacked out Chrysler pulls into the arena, and I don't know how many people knew it was MJF by the footwear, but he had some nice pumps on. I don't know, man. This is one of the tougher things to pull off ever in our 3 years, because there's so many moving parts with everything going on throughout the day and throughout the months leading up to it, really. So I don't know, man. The reactions, that's what we live for as a promoter, as a performer, anyone. That's what we do it for. So I don't know. What did you think when you watched the video clip? Because that surfaced very quickly.
Yeah, well, it generated a lot of hype, obviously, and I think clearly a shock. I very much believed that there was legitimate heat here. I know there was legitimate heat here.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's not.
And I know there was. And, JT Dunn turning his back, and I guess we have this partnership between these two. I don't really know what to think, but it feels like all-out warfare is on deck for Limitless Wrestling. And
we just don't have, it's controlled chaos, but there's no control. That's the I mean, that's what Limitless Wrestling is, it seems like. And I can understand, I have the whole time JT's stance with Ace Romero, because they're two guys who have really fought for this company and really had some, in my opinion, some of the best matches of their careers in Limitless Wrestling. And they're two guys who feel like they've built this place from the ground up. So obviously there's going to be that, I don't know, competitive jealousy maybe is the term, but obviously,
well, they both have big egos. They both have big egos. They both want to be the top guy. They both want to be the star. And in the case of one of these individuals, being the top guy, having everyone focusing on them, seemed to overweigh and overmatch friendship and respect.
I suppose so, because I don't know if it was frustrations for JT losing that match to Ace Romero either. Like, I don't know.
See, I don't think
how many
so.
factors
I don't
go
think
into
so,
that.
because this was clearly a pre-planned attack here. This, whether JT Dunn won or not, evidently with this alliance with MJF, this was.
I suppose. I don't even see JT, like, if I were to see JT Dunn and MJF in a restaurant together, I would not assume that they're friends. I would just assume it's like,
they're clearly on the same page here.
Apparently.
This was a premeditated attack.
I guess common motives.
This was a premeditated attack. And now, does that mean that, they're going to be a tag team going forward or anything like that? Not necessarily, no. But they're clearly on the same page here and clearly have similar goals, that they have decided that, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, I suppose it makes sense, because if we really break it down here, they're two of the most successful Limitless guys, so to speak, in Limitless Wrestling over the past year and a half,
Well, MJF, too, his national radar has expanded dramatically in the last year.
Oh, yeah, with MLW, with All In, he's everywhere.
So take us through this, Randy. How did this come about?
I mean, it was just a long course of, where do we go from here with everything? And I knew MJF's schedule is going to be picking up quite a bit, as it did, obviously in the earlier parts of this year. I didn't know that he's going to be, on MLW as a contracted wrestler with MLW, or I didn't know that he was going to be, on All In. You don't know that in fucking January or February, but we knew that we could do something cool throughout this summer without having to do anything on a show, if that makes sense.
Right.
And that's the big test of today in wrestling. And I think that's the fun challenge, is how do we take a problem? Because let me just be honest here. The date thing, the schedule mix up, that's 100% real. And that was 100% me being pissed off. Mm-hmm. But how do we turn a negative into a positive, and how can we You know,
Rectify it.
how do we keep the track going,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense?
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's a cool test, and it's a testament to how wrestling is today with social media, with just online things, how you can carry something. You know what I mean? You don't have to always have everybody there to be able to make something work.
Right.
And I think a lot of people don't think outside of the box like that. Some do, obviously. We've seen it happen before and very well, but I don't know. It's a lot to go into it, and it's a lot to I don't know, go back and forth on to make sure it makes sense in the
what
end.
were your interactions like with him?
I mean, when we had the original, date, I would say mixed up, but it's just, all that shit that we talked about before. Tense, because this is me, I've invested in this guy since, March of 2017, and this is how I view it. I've invested in this guy since March of 2017, made him a priority, and I like to think that I made a priority as well. You know what I mean? Because if I'm putting all this time into you on shows in front of my fan base, I want to believe that someone cares as much as I do, and they don't have to. I don't have to be of that mindset, because I'm essentially, if we want to break it down, I'm hiring them for a job as an independent contractor. They don't have to give us the slightest fuck, you know what I mean? But we have a locker room of just so many people who do give a fuck. I do expect more people to give a fuck, if that makes sense. Because people like, Ace Romero, Anthony Green, MSP, Ashley Vox, like, they're all consistently coming to me with ideas. How are we going to build this company? How are we going to, what are we going to do from here? Blah, blah, blah. Max was the same way. And then, that date confliction makes me think otherwise. You know what I mean? Because it's someone's word that I take to heart. And then we have a situation like that occurs. It's just like, all right, let's just crumple all this shit up, throw it away, and just, figure it out after that, because I knew we were going to be without him for the summer. So I'm just like, well, what are we going to do from here? And that's kind of what led to everything.
Does MJF care about wrestling fans?
About wrestling fans?
Yes.
I don't know. I would take a brisk look at his Twitter at
That's what I'm
the
referring to,
_MJF, yeah. And you can get an idea.
So this is a move entirely motivated by his own desire to be the best at the very best, in your opinion?
It's a mix of that and making a positive out of a negative situation with our fan base, yeah.
So maybe,
because it all boils down, for me, it all boils down to our fans and who do they like, what do they like, how can we make them emotionally invested in what we're doing. And I think we did that within the span from March to September. We had a story that people did not know was a story, and they were invested in it because it felt 100% legitimate, because there were a lot of parts of it that were legitimate. We did have, as I said, we did have those date conflictions. We did have me being pissed off, and I own it now. I don't have the right to be pissed off at someone for, not giving as much of a fuck about everything as I do. But, I can't not focus on our fans, and I can't not focus on Limitless Wrestling, because that's what I have. So that's what I'm going to be 100% focused on. And that's what I'm going to try to, just make the best out of any situation for, because that's my job. So I don't know. I'm happy that it came out the way it did.
So what now?
I don't know, man. I have no idea. As you said in the beginning, the landscape of Limitless has changed, and I don't think anything is the same from here on out. So I honestly don't know what's next. I think we'll have announcements forthcoming, because tickets go on sale the second week of October for our return on November 30th. So I think definitely after this week concludes, next week is going to start some announcements. But we'll preview the show later, but there were some announcements already that, Impact Wrestling Tag Team Champions Santana and Ortiz will be making their return on 11/30. Mr. Fun Size Marco Stunt makes his debut, and there's going to be a shit ton more. So that'll all start next week.
So what was Ace Romero doing after this? I imagine you saw him after the match. What was going through his head?
We were honestly trying to make sure that Ace was okay. that last death by elbow from JT Dunn, I don't know if it hit something on him but he was
Knocked him cold.
He was down for quite some time. I was at the door still, shooting the shit with people as they were leaving, and Kevin Quinn runs over to get me, and we legitimately had a probably 10-minute span where we didn't know if he was concussed or we didn't know what had happened to him. But luckily, we have referees who are also, they're trained in, I don't know what the term is, nursing or being doctors or knowing shit a lot better than I do about like concussions and that protocol. So we checked him out and he was okay. But he was hurting. Ace is wrestling a lot now, as you've seen. He's everywhere, and I think the wear and tear might have caught up to him at the end of this night because he was hurting. But we had a moment before he was leaving where we just kind of reminisced on how far we've come with Limitless, because Ace Romero, this doesn't get talked about a lot, but Ace Romero was living in Maine at the time when we started Limitless Wrestling, and he was, very, very important in the early stages of Limitless. Like, he posted with me for the first show.
Mm-hmm.
He was there setting up the ring for a couple of the first shows. Like, this dude's done a lot for Limitless Wrestling, so it's very, very cool to go from such a small show at the very beginning to nearly 500 people last Friday. It's still surreal to both of us, so it was cool to have that moment before he left.
What did you think of the actual main event?
From what I saw, it was a very good match. It was very hard hitting, and it was. I think the coolest thing is it was very different from the match that they had 2 years ago in Orono. I don't know if you were there for that one,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it shows how far they've come as performers. And if anyone hasn't seen that match, it is up for free. YouTube.com/Limitless Wrestling. Just type in JT Dunn versus Ace Romero, and you'll find it. But that actually kicked off the show May of 2016, no dropkicks in the living room, and now they're main eventing 2 years later. And two very different matches, still very heavily strike-based because that's both their offenses, but just a fun watch all around from everything I caught. I probably caught about half of it, but from everything I saw, very fun. I did see Ace Romero pounce JT Dunn from the floor into the ring, which was pretty insane.
A little different.
Yep.
Let's talk about this show here. Chris Dickinson defeated Brian Cage, the match that a lot of people were really looking forward to. It had been in the works for several months now. Finally happened again, and Dickinson is the one who picks up the win over a guy who's pretty damn prominent on the pro wrestling scene right now.
Yeah, and I think this is a big win for Dickinson because Brian Cage really, if we look at the past, 10 months in Limitless Wrestling, Brian Cage is the only one who's had Chris Dickinson's number. We look back, Chris Dickinson's wrestled Eddie Kingston, PCO, Cam Zagami. No one has been able to defeat Chris Dickinson other than Brian Cage. So I think getting that win back is super important for Chris Dickinson, not only in Limitless Wrestling, but probably for his ego as well. But man, I'm so stoked that this got to kick off the show again. After what the match was in March, I looked at this card and there was no way that there was any other match kicking off. This was a barn burner. I get to watch the whole thing. Just an exceptional match. Brian Cage is a big dude, and I haven't seen anyone throw him around like Chris Dickinson has. So another big win for Chris Dickinson, and I think Chris Dickinson really cemented that he's going to be a player in Limitless Wrestling throughout year 4.
That was going to be my follow-up to that. It seems like low-key, under the radar, Chris Dickinson has really become one of the very best in Limitless. Like, when you think of Limitless, you talk about Ace Romero, you talk about JT Dunn, you talk about Josh Briggs at this stage. I gotta think that Dickinson's nearing that Mount Rushmore status because he has been elite in Limitless.
Yeah, I agree. And I love the way you put that because he has kind of flown under the radar, but he's been in these marquee matches. But he's still flying under the radar because I don't think people see Chris really as that Limitless regular, and I think they did see it more in on Friday at Pretenders Beware because he came out and the reaction, the Dirty Daddy chants it blew the roof off the place. So now I think people understand, Chris Dickinson's not just this dude who's coming in every now and then. Chris Dickinson's here all the time now, and not only here all the time, but he's victorious, he's successful. So. I do think he really cemented himself as a top player in Limitless, and I'm excited to see what year 4 brings for the Dirty Daddy.
I'm gonna get yelled at if I don't mention Anthony Green in that Mount Rushmore. So sorry about that, AG. Meant to include you on that. But exciting things ahead for Chris Dickinson, and we'll hit on that more in a minute. But later on, Christian Casanova defeated Kevin Blackwood. Stokely, of course, helped him get the win there. I don't think this is as much momentum stopping for Kevin Blackwood. He did lose because of cheating, classic. And but give credit where credit's due to Casanova. He knows how to win, whether it's fair or square or not. He knows how to win, and this guy has been on a roll.
And let's look at a year ago, Limitless Wrestling. No one really remembers Christian Casanova because he had been gone since, what was it, September of 2016, I want to say? Yeah, September 2016. So for a whole year, there was no Christian Casanova in Limitless. He had not ever wrestled in Westbrook. And then November of last year, he comes back. It's a reincarnated Christian Casanova with Stokely Hathaway. And it's just off to the races from there. And we look at the victories, man. Ethan Page, Brody King, Ashley Vox. He nearly won the Vacation Land Cup in July. Like, Christian and Stokely is a winning combination. But that's the thing is, let's say we took Stokely away from Christian. Is he still going to be as successful? And I'm not taking anything away from Christian because Christian is a super talented performer. But I'm at the point now where I'm either, I'm thinking of either banning Stokely from ringside or putting him in a match. Like, I don't know how to equal the odds. And Tony P, props to Tony P because Stokely ripped him out of the ring, and Tony P was in his face ready to throw him right the fuck out. But man, like, we look at that match, Kevin Blackwood was on a roll throughout that match, and then he had the chains in his hand. He got the chain, and it looked like he was going to use it. And then the referee caught him, and that's what led to the roll-up with the tights pulled from Christian. And just a bummer way to lose for Kevin Blackwood, but I definitely don't think he's done with the dream team. He was out and had a couple different occasions where it looked like he was going to pin Christian Casanova.
I don't think this hurts him in any way either. I don't think losing like that hurts you. I think it's a testament to you, if anything else, that you're not going to go cheat yourself, that you're not going to try to, go under the radar and do your own thing. I think it speaks to his testament and will. So, hey, you mentioned throwing Stokely in a match. I can speak from experience.
I'll probably get sued from Stokely's
I can speak from experience. Sometimes a manager going into a match and having to actually fight for themselves, it could humble them a little bit.
That's the thing, man. So, and I'm sure Kevin Blackwood would love to connect with a big knee to the side of Stokely's dome. So
I've been smushed and chopped and then put in a Boston Crab by your boy Big Moxie Matt Mahoney, and that is a big hoss to be thrown around by. I want to sidebar on him real quick. We saw him at the last Let's Wrestle show. What do you think of Big Moxie Matt Mahoney? I've always thought that his ceiling is very high, and if he could just narrow his focus a little bit and be able to devote a little more into it, I think he could be a real role player in the main wrestling scene.
I agree. I think he's got a lot of potential, and that's the thing. And I think if he had like a 6 to 8 month span where he could really just focus and dedicate himself to wrestling, I think he'd be in a very good position for himself because, he's already showing some cool stuff at the Let's Wrestle shows. He's been wrestling like 3 years now.
That's 3 years. Yep. Mm-hmm.
But I think it would really benefit him to, focus in, take that 6 to 8 months, travel, do whatever he needs to do, get on some new shows, work with some new people. But he's coming along, and I hope that we can really kind of tap into some of that untapped potential in Let's Wrestle.
There's a certain X factor that some of the very best wrestlers have and the best performers have, and it's intensity. And he can bring it, man. I mean, I've stared him down in the middle of the ring and felt incredibly intimidated just looking at him.
And he's got a lot of natural charisma too, and you can't teach that. It's super cool.
I'd like to start seeing him on more Let's Wrestle, and hopefully we can see where he goes from there. But that's just a little sidebar on Big Moxie. I always like Big Moxie, and I think he's as nice as a guy as you're ever going to meet. So
he is.
That's for sure. All right, here's a match that I've been talking a lot to Alexander Lee lately, and he even mentioned this to me unprovoked. I didn't even ask him about it. Unprovoked, he mentioned to me how great it felt to kick Joey Eastman out of Limitless Wrestling. MSP defeated Free to Think via the main state death drop, and Joey Eastman gets the Jon Alba treatment. See you later.
We're losing them all, man.
You
We're
are.
losing them all.
You are. See you later to Joey Eastman. MSP finally, as a unit, gets its win back in Limitless Wrestling.
Dude, what a long road for them to finally get that trios win. But how sweet it is to say goodbye to Joey Eastman, man. Like, this was fun, and this was not the original incarnation of the match. As many saw, we had the promo video up with Masshole Mike McCarthy. He was the third member originally of Free to Think. Mike actually broke his arm in a wrestling match. He fell from the top turnbuckle to a concrete floor and broke his arm at XWA a couple weeks beforehand. So Casey Catal was the replacement, Brandon Kirk's real life girlfriend, if a lot of people don't know. So it was a very interesting replacement. But you know, Casey, for her Limitless debut, held her own, man. I had only seen her wrestle once or twice, and she's out of the New York area. I believe a Creative Pro student. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, but no, man, she held her own. I think she was a very interesting addition to Free to Think, but I've never heard a reaction in that building as loud as when MSP got the 3 count on Jeff Cannonball after the main state death drop. And I actually got to be on commentary for this match with Top Shelf, and what a fun match this was, man. Just so many cool things. Fucking Alexander Lee's trust fall to the outside. After the match, Alexander Lee crowd surfs after the win. It was such a cool moment, man, and so many people really enjoyed it. I don't know. I'm happy, man. MSP has had a rough year, to say the least, and hopefully this win really kicks off a fun year for them, because you know, they're some of my closest friends, but man, they put so much work into this, the main state posse thing. Like, I hope not only year 4 in Limitless, but I hope this upcoming year is big for them in general.
How beat up was Alexander Lee after this match?
So, me and Alexander Lee actually stayed together that night because we were gonna bring the chairs back to the rental place the next day. So we're on the way to the hotel. We get Otto on the way there, and dude's just limping hard. He really fucked up his knee, and I didn't really realize it till we got to the hotel, because he's just limping down the hallway. He was bad for like 3 or 4 days after the show, because it was just he had actually, I don't know if anyone remembers, but when he was gone from Limitless for that period from 2016 to 2017, it was like an 8 to 9 month period, but it was because he tore some ligaments like in his knee area. So he was like walking in a knee brace for like 3 months. So we were definitely hoping that it was not to that extent, and we were kind of worried for a couple days. But I talked to him yesterday. He's seemingly like a lot better. He's moving it a lot better. It's bending a lot better. So he's going to take a week off, I think, and then give it another go. But definitely not as bad as before. But he was quite beat up after the match.
Rumor has it that he's driving a nice whip these days, so that's gonna make him feel better. Anyway,
yeah, he's got the former Albamobile.
Yeah,
so
he does. He does have the former Albamobile. Free to Think, first loss in Limitless for them. Does that affect anything, or are they going to be back and you expect to see them again?
No, I would definitely expect to see them again. You know, regardless of how many people hate them, they have developed a little fan base in the Limitless crowd. But Jeff Cannonball will not be there in November. He is booked elsewhere, but I definitely think you'll see Brandon Kirk on the show, and maybe even Casey Catal, man. Very impressive debut for her, and to swing back around to it too, you'll definitely be seeing Masshole Mike McCarthy back in Limitless and Let's Wrestle once he is healthy. And from what I understand, he could be back in a ring by the end of the year. So we're hoping for the best for him, and we will keep you posted.
You mentioned Kirk being there. Hey, give me those two versus Jeremy Leary and Skylar. I'd be happy with that.
That'd be fun as hell.
Would be very fun. There's an idea just to think about.
I like it.
So, Joey Eastman, he's gone. Is that it? Are we definitively seeing the rest of it? I know you never say never in wrestling, but is that it?
Yeah, you never say never, but never, man. Like Joey, he literally could not come back into the locker room. I don't know if you saw the video, but Joey, he takes one last bow, and then the main state posse are behind him again. Alexander Lee throws Joey on his shoulders, and they walk him out of the building and throw his stuff in the parking lot.
There you
They
go.
literally threw him out of the building, which is crazy, but he's gone.
Colt Cabana back in Limitless Wrestling for the first time since facing Troy Nelson. This time against Anthony Green. Anthony Green coming off a huge loss at the last show. He had his honeys with him this time. And a chance for the Limitless audience to see a different Anthony Green, a little different side of him that they hadn't seen before. But he falls again, this time to the indie legend Colt Cabana. And first off, nice to see Colt Cabana back, I'd imagine.
Yes,
But
I love Colt.
this is a huge loss for Anthony Green.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we saw Anthony Green come into this show kind of, I would say, revitalized.
Refocused.
Yeah, revamped. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of different terms that we could put on it. But we look at the Anthony Green that we saw in July, the one that was flanked by Brett Domino and DL Hurst. Now we look at the new retrosexual Anthony Green. We really got the retro AG experience at Pretenders Beware. Like, this is the new Anthony Green. As I said, one chapter closed, a new chapter opened, and that's a new chapter for Anthony Green as well. Now flanked by the Platinum Honeys, and we'll get into Brett Domino as well. I don't think I really briefed you on this, but Brett Domino had a rough night. His first night really in Limitless without Anthony Green, and it was rough. But yeah, a new Anthony Green, and I think it was expected that Anthony Green's, going to get right back on track here. And instead, no. And, we look at 2 losses in a row, and we're for anyone else, it's like, okay, they'll get back into it. But for Anthony Green, who won for 2.5, nearly 3 years straight in Limitless Wrestling, we look at it like, what is happening? Like, the world is ending for Anthony Green. Like, it's not ending because, we look, it's a steel cage, like half of a steel cage, I should say, but it's a steel cage loss to Ace Romero. It's a loss to an independent wrestling legend like Colt Cabana. It's nothing to really, it's obviously a bummer, but it's nothing to, say it's the end of the world about. But no, this was a really fun match.
Look,
Colt
I
Cabana
agree
was
with
extra
you.
flirtatious.
I agree with you, but this is also a match that if Anthony Green wants to have the bragging rights of I am the very best, he has to win.
Oh yeah, this is the national champion losing to, 2 ranked teams, but it's still 2 straight losses, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's a rough spot for Anthony Green, but I don't know. I don't really know where Anthony Green is at right now. We'll talk about his insertion later in the show as well, but yeah, it's a weird point right now for Anthony Green.
No doubt about that. Ace Austin retains the Wrestling Revolver Open Invite Scramble title, defeating Sami Callihan, Matt Cross. What? Jessica Havoc, Mick Moretti, and Daniel Garcia. So first off, Matt Cross, take me through that.
Dude, I was so stoked about this. So first of all, the scramble was never going to be like this originally. This is not the usual layout that we do for a scramble. Like, I love scrambles, first of all. And we did a little test. I think I talked to you about this. I want to say it was in January. We didn't do a scramble. And it was more so to see, where the fans at with the scramble. Like, if they were bummed that there was no scramble, that means we should obviously have one, because it's been a staple of Limitless since the first show. But sometimes you have to kind of take something away to see if it's missed. And we got a lot of tweets and a lot of posts about no scramble. So the scrambles have been implemented back into the shows full time. And usually it's for returns, debuts, or in-betweens, I should say, because it's like, this is a perfect place for somebody to return to Limitless Wrestling. It's a perfect place for somebody to debut. And it's also a perfect place, like, if there's a core roster member with nothing going on throughout the show, this is a good way for them to insert themselves into a scramble and really get back on track in Limitless Wrestling. So it's usually that weird, melting pot of dudes or girls. We've done an all-women's scramble before too, and that was exceptional. But that's the thing, is there's no limitations on these scrambles, and that's really what we proved with this scramble, because it's Ace Austin. it's not only just Ace Austin, but it's him defending his Open Invite Scramble Championship, which we don't do many championship matches in Limitless. And I don't know, it really evolved from there because I knew Mick Moretti was going to be in it. Mick Moretti is from Australia, for those who don't know. And Mick comes over at least once a year on these excursions where he stays for about 3 or 4 weeks. And this time he came up for Chikara King of Trios. And we had him actually last year at the La Kermesse Festival. And luckily he hit me up again. We were able to have him again. Daniel Garcia, he's one of the Buffalo Boys with Blackwood and Puff. He had his debut at the Hollis Pirate Fest, did exceptional. So he was going to be in the scramble as well. And then there's another 3 spots. And I had the idea originally because Sami Callihan, what the original plan was I was going to have him do an open challenge that was going to be accepted by a surprise, which was going to be Matt Cross. But it's just how the show kind of developed where we were having 10 matches already, and that would have made an 11th if we were going that route. So I just thought, what if we do this all within the scramble? And we actually added Jessica Havoc pretty last minute. I think she was added like 3 or 4 weeks before the show, just because she was going to be in the area as well. And Jess is usually busy when we have shows. So it was pretty cool to have her last minute. And M-Dog, we had that plan for a while. As I said, I just didn't know it was going to be in the scramble. But I thought that was a really cool surprise. I love having M-Dog. Like, he's just one of the busiest guys in pro wrestling, so it's tough to get him. So anytime I can, I want to. And I'm happy that not a lot of people saw him before the show, and it was a real cool surprise for everybody.
Not too many matches in Limitless history have had this much talent in one match.
Yeah, dude. Like, that's the cool thing about it, too, if you break it down. We've got Ace Austin, who's on the rise. Daniel Garcia and Mick Moretti are relative, like, up until this night, I would say, relative unknowns to the Limitless audience. And then, we've got, I would say, 3 of the biggest independent wrestlers going today in Jessica Havoc, M-Dog, and Sami Callihan.
That's not an insult to anyone, by the way, me saying that. It's just the reality. These are some of the biggest names out there, so it's pretty incredible. Here's a match I have really, really wanted to see, and I'm begging you, please send me this match when it's up. Josh Briggs and Brody King. Josh Briggs picks up the win here, defending his turf on the anniversary show. Brody King right now, if you're into the whole wrestling news business, you'd believe that both New Japan and WWE are very interested in Brody King, and it's not hard to see why.
No, if that's the case, I totally understand that. And now that you say that, I would love to fucking see Brody King in New Japan.
Yeah, you're kidding
me. What a fit. It feels so... He feels like an old school Haas that they'd bring over in the mid-90s.
Except he's significantly more athletic than any of those Haas's were.
Dude, insanely athletic, and he showed it throughout this match. I did not get to see much of this match. We had a lot of moving parts in the second half, so a lot of the second half I was not able to see. But from everything I heard, this was just a brutal match, as you can expect from 2 guys of this size and athleticism. Just crazy. And I did get to see the end, and Josh Briggs then grabbing the mic, very reminiscent to Teddy Hart a year ago. Makes an open challenge to anyone in the locker room who wants to come out. And Brett Domino accepted this challenge of Josh Briggs. And Brett, I don't know where he got the gumption, but he goes right up in Briggs' face and says, "I'm Brett Domino, motherfucker." And for that, he got himself an M5. And Briggs then reissued the challenge, and Chris Dickinson comes out to accept it. And Pazuzu bombs Brett Domino to kind of one-up Josh Briggs, and then we make that match official just after that. It'll be Briggs and Dickinson on 11:30 in Portland.
So imagine if Chris Dickinson wins that. Then you have to include him at the very top of Limitless.
Yeah, and this is a big match because these are 2 guys who have been kind of streaking throughout this year. Josh Briggs, Chris Dickinson, with I think each of them had 1 or 2 minor hiccups and losses this year, but other than that, nearly untouchable. And I don't know, I'm kind of frightened to see where this one goes because it's just going to be a war.
Chris Statlander and Dave Van defeated Ashley Vox and Willow Nightingale. When was the last time that Dave Van was in Limitless?
So technically, because we have smaller shows throughout the summer.
Well, I'm talking one of the major shows, one of the major.
I
shows.
know. I just want to break this down for people. We have smaller shows throughout the summer, like at fairs and festivals and anything like that. She was a part of numerous for Limitless this summer. But if we're talking just big shows in general, like either Orono, Portland, Westbrook, I would have to rewind. It's been almost a year. It's been since November of last year, Hybrid Moments. She was a part of the all-women's scramble.
Okay. So it's been a while.
About 10 months.
Been a while since she'd been in Limitless. So she comes back, picks up a win here with Chris Statlander. Ashley Vox, man. Oh, you hope she's not going to start losing some momentum because the tough loss against Casanova, obviously, after Stokely hurt her there. She loses here. And then AG comes out and lays her out. What is going on here? What is up with this?
Just don't know, man. Again, we have no control on anything. So it was very interesting throughout this match. Chris Statlander, obviously, she's an alien, using her powers, and Willow Nightingale fought right out of it and blasted her in the face. But Ashley Vox seemingly cannot withstand the powers of Chris Statlander, and that's what led to the scissor kick. That's what led to the win for Statlander and Davienne, which also I think is a really cool team. I really enjoyed the teams in this one, by the way. Vox and Nightingale and Statlander and Davienne. It was a pick your partner tag team match, and I think the teams were very interesting. But yeah, let's look at post-match. Anthony Green coming out, just strolling out there, doesn't say a word, super kicks her in the face, and grabs the microphone, berates the fans for cheering her for losing and then not cheering him for winning for 2.5 years. I can understand the frustration, but I don't know if that's the way to go about it. Luckily, Willow Nightingale was still out there to chase off Anthony Green, and we do hope Ashley's okay. But I don't know, man. That was another thing that's very uncharacteristic of Anthony Green. I don't know. It's a new Anthony Green, as I said earlier.
I'm trying to figure out what kind of punishment there should be for AG here. And I love AG, I do. But this is just rude, it's unnecessary. Clearly we're going to get a match here between these two at some point.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I could go to Ashley Vox and say, hey, would you like a punishment? I don't any other business wouldn't say, yeah, I'd like to wrestle him.
No, but I feel like, look, this is now 2 times in a row Ashley Vox has been humiliated. Humiliated by Stokely, and now humiliated by AG. She doesn't deserve that.
No, I agree.
She doesn't deserve that. And I think, other than just a match, I think AG should have to pay here. And, I don't know.
We'll figure something out.
Maybe if he loses against Ashley Vox, he should have to physically get fish hooked. Like actually stick a fish hook.
Oh, no. Like, have you ever seen Wild Boys?
Yes.
On MTV?
Yes.
When fucking Steve-O put the hook through his cheek?
Yes.
Oh, that's the worst. That is the worst thing I've ever watched.
Fish hook through the tights match.
Good Christ. I don't know if we can. That'd be the first time that ever happened.
AG might be into that, so I don't know. He's a strange cat these
John,
days.
where's your head at today, man?
Don't look at me. Have you seen some of this stuff that this guy does?
Oh, I know, but that's a fish hook through your cheek, dude.
Anywho.
Whew.
Austin Theory defeated DJZ. I've heard nothing but incredible things about this match.
This one's just, and I knew, I mean, like when you look at this match on paper that it's going to be exceptional, but this is the first time I've ever seen DJZ live. Like, I've obviously seen DJZ for years. I remember him from True Life. I think it was True Life.
Yeah.
He was Shima Zion going to the Ring of Honor tryout. Mm-hmm. Danny Inferno was on that one too. Any longtime main wrestling fan will remember that name. But man, this was just exceptional, man. This is just I would have loved to watch them go for 20 minutes. Like, I don't know, Austin Theory. I think it's common knowledge that Austin Theory is not going to be on the independent wrestling scene much longer, and I hope DJZ. I hope it's the same for him, man. I don't think he's still contracted by Impact. I honestly don't know, but I watched him in that match, and I thought, man, this dude would be so good on fucking 205 Live. Like, I definitely hope that he gets a look because this was just exceptional. And Austin Theory's been kind of a core roster guy for the past year for Limitless, and I'd like to see DJZ become the same. Obviously, he's super, super busy, but I'd love to have that dude back very soon because this was an exceptional match, and this is one that I think we'll put on youtube.com/Limitless Wrestling just so people get a taste of how good these guys really are, if they don't know already.
And the Thick Boys defeated Whiskey Dick. This one got a little crazy, I hear.
It did, and I wanted to talk about this one specifically because there were a couple people online who were not super stoked about the match because it's just not their cup of tea, and I get that. But I do want people to understand why we have matches like this on shows because, like, the thing is when I'm putting together a card, and this obviously doesn't happen every time because it doesn't fit every time, but when I'm putting stuff together, I try to think of every wrestling fan because there are fans who enjoy anything that's entertaining. So there are going to be the fans who, top to bottom, they love Limitless Wrestling, they love the cards, they love everybody involved, and that's fucking awesome. But I do understand that there are going to be people who don't like everything because there are going to be dudes who are very much like hardcore, extreme, violence wrestling fans. So we get a little bit for them every show. They're going to be fans who maybe they just like the high-flying lucha libre style is going to be stuff for them every show. But there's also going to be fans who they might be a casual wrestling fan who just wants to be entertained. And whether it's comedy and wrestling or just good matches, they like to be entertained. So that's the thing with something like this is like I try to present all different flavors of ice cream if I can, kind of like a pro wrestling buffet where there's something for everybody. Sometimes it works out better than others. I fucking loved this match. I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I think a lot of people did because the reactions throughout the match were super fun. So, yeah, the Thick Boys, Whiskey Dick, they're two fun teams. They're two teams that were created in Limitless Wrestling. And this was super fun. It was an end of summer street fight bash kind of deal. Dick Justice almost tapped out to funneling down some beer. There's just some really fun stuff in this match. And I do know, it's not for everybody. But for those who it's not for, I do want them to understand why they're on the cards. And I appreciate people who don't like every style of wrestling, but they're not rude about it. Our fans are very, very polite, and there are obviously some rude wrestling fans online. But, if people don't like something, they just say it and they don't go any further than that. And that's fine because to me, that points out to me what people like and what they don't like and what I can do more and what I can do less. So overall, though, I really enjoyed the match. I think it's a super fun watch, and I recommend it, especially for those who like the comedy in professional wrestling.
I understand that kind of wrestling's not for everyone. There's times where I watch something and I think to myself, this is pretty stupid, and there's nothing to it, but when you have a show that's just so loaded, you have to have something to break it up. It's like when you're chewing gum for a really long time and it loses its taste, you got to do something to keep it fresh, And I've got no issues with this at all. And I also know that all four of those guys work super, super hard, no matter what kind of match they're in. So,
they really do, man. That's the thing. Like, I was talking to Troy Nelson about it, and Troy Nelson, for those who don't know, Troy Nelson's been around since day one, and he's a guy who I talk to, nearly daily, always weekly, and we just shoot the shit about Limitless. And he's so invested in this company, and he's straight up told me that Limitless is the reason that he's still working right now, and that's very cool. And him and Dick Justice, they put a lot into this tag team. Dick Justice is a low key, a very great mind of professional wrestling, and when you actually sit down and talk to him, you understand that. And Jay Freddie and John Silver, I always say they're two guys who I think are overlooked a ton. I love them as a tag team. They never did it until September of last year, and I think they've come so far in just a year as the Thick Boys. So I'm excited to see where they go. I'm excited for all four of them in Limitless throughout the year 4.
No doubt about that. And that's Pretenders Beware, and that takes us to November. And in November, it's November 30th, the Portland Club. And so far, we've got Chris Dickinson versus Josh Briggs. We have, as you said, Mr. Fun Size, Marco Stunt, LAX. The return of Darby Allin, who is fresh off of a match with the Velveteen Dream.
Yeah, dude. Independent wrestling is crazy right now. I keep forgetting that was a thing.
It was a thing. And he also faced Austin Theory, too. Velveteen Dream. So
I have to watch those at some point.
Yeah, what do you think of Velveteen Dream?
I really enjoy him. Man, I remember when he didn't win that Tough Enough. I did not know why, because he was the dude in that Tough Enough class who actually knew his shit, you know. But I'm happy that he got a second chance with the WWE, and it's pretty cool because, like, I remember there were a lot of people very skeptical about this Velveteen Dream character when, you know, the rumors were going around, and then when people saw, like, him in the gear for the first time, when people knew it was actually happening, there was a lot of people pretty skeptical about that. So I'm very happy it's worked out for him, man. He's one of the most over dudes on NXT right now, and it's pretty crazy how far he's come in such a short amount of time.
You're not wrong about that. He seems like the kind of guy that would have flourished in a Limitless Wrestling setting.
I think so too, man.
Absolutely. So, November 30th. What's this show going to be called, Randy?
It's going to be called No Control because that's all we have. It's No Control.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. You're not wrong about that. Limitless has just become insane in these last 3 years as we move into year 4 here, and you never know what is going to happen. Anything else you want to add this week, Randy?
Not a ton, man. If you're interested in that Let's Wrestle show that we talked about earlier, definitely head over to limitlesswrestling.com. Go onto the Let's Wrestle banner. You can grab your tickets. Front row is only $10. There's only 10 front row tickets left. General admission is $8. And then, as we said, November 30th, Portland, Maine, Limitless Wrestling presents No Control. We've got Darby Allin, LAX, Marco Stunt, Josh Briggs goes one-on-one with Chris Dickinson. And definitely be looking next week. We'll have a ton of announcements for you as we head into October. Other than that, I would say keep your ears open because I think Limitless Wrestling may be, doing some more shows before the end of the year, not just November 30th. So maybe we'll talk about that next week on the podcast, John.
Perhaps we will. We'll see you next time, folks.